The capture. The Zephyrian scout ship. Silent Talon drifted through the outer rim of the Sol system like a predator stalking its prey. Commander Vextar stood at the observation deck, his 4 eyes scanning the primitive blue world that orbited the yellow star. For 6,000 years, the Galactic Empire had maintained perfect peace across 10,000 worlds, and humanity had been nothing more than a footnote in their vast databases. "Such a backwater species," Vextar muttered to his aide, Lieutenant Kreshna. "They barely achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, and they still fight among themselves over resources and territory. Pathetic." The Zephyrians had been watching Earth for decades, cataloging human behavior and technology. What they discovered amused them. Humans were weak, fragmented, and technologically inferior. Their military forces were laughably primitive compared to Empire standards. Most importantly, they had no allies in the galaxy. They were alone, isolated, and vulnerable. "Sir, we have located the target facility," reported the ship's scanner operator. "It appears to be some kind of educational institution for their young. Multiple life signs detected, ages ranging from 5 to 15 Earth years." Vexitar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. The Empire had very specific needs, and human children would serve those needs perfectly. Young minds were malleable, easy to condition and train. The Empire's slave markets had been requesting exotic specimens from newly discovered worlds, and human children would fetch premium prices. More importantly, taking their young would demonstrate to the adult humans exactly how powerless they were against the Empire's might. The facility below was called Riverside Elementary and Middle School, located in a small town in what humans called Colorado. It was perfect for their purposes, isolated enough to avoid immediate detection, yet populated enough to make their point clear. The children were outside for what their databases indicated was called recess, playing primitive games on a paved area behind the main building. "Begin the collection," Vextar ordered. The Silent Talon descended through Earth's atmosphere, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to human detection systems. Specialized containment pods deployed from the ship's belly, each one designed to capture and preserve organic specimens. The operation was swift and efficient, honed through centuries of similar raids on primitive worlds. Energy beams swept across the playground, causing every human child to collapse into unconsciousness. Robotic harvester drones descended on anti-grav platforms, methodically loading the small bodies into containment pods. Teachers and staff members who tried to intervene were stunned into unconsciousness as well, though they would be left behind. The Empire had no use for fully mature specimens. Within 15 minutes, 47 human children had been captured and loaded aboard the scout ship. The youngest was a 5-year-old girl named Emma, who had been playing hopscotch when the beams struck her down. The oldest was a 14-year-old boy named Marcus, who had been trying to protect the smaller children when the drones arrived. All of them now lay in deep sleep inside the ship's cargo hold, their fate sealed. As the Silent Talon began its ascent back to space, Vextar reviewed the mission parameters one final time. The operation had been flawless. Human authorities would discover the empty school within hours, but by then the ship would be deep in hyperspace, carrying its precious cargo toward Empire space. The humans would investigate, panic, and eventually realize they were dealing with forces far beyond their comprehension. "Set course for the Andromedus sector," Vextar commanded. "The slave markets on Zelnara Prime will pay handsomely for these specimens. Fresh human children are a rare commodity." The ship engaged its hyperdrive, vanishing from the Sol system in a flash of twisted space-time. Behind them, they left a world that had no idea what was coming. On Earth, the first signs of the tragedy emerged 2 hours later. Parents began arriving at Riverside School for afternoon pickup, only to find emergency vehicles surrounding the building. Teachers and staff were being treated for what appeared to be some kind of mass stunning incident. They told impossible stories of aircraft that couldn't be seen, robots that moved without sound, and beams of light that made everyone fall asleep. The playground was empty. 47 children had simply vanished without a trace. Within hours, every major government on Earth had been briefed on the situation. Military commanders who had dismissed UFO reports for decades suddenly found themselves facing undeniable evidence of extraterrestrial intervention. The kidnapping of an entire school's worth of children was an act of war, but against an enemy they couldn't locate, couldn't understand, and couldn't fight. President Sarah Chen stood in the White House Situation Room, staring at satellite footage that showed nothing but empty sky above the school at the time of the incident. Her military advisors shuffled through reports that made no sense. Her scientific advisors proposed theories that sounded like science fiction. Her diplomatic team suggested trying to make contact with whoever was responsible. "How do you negotiate with ghosts?" Chen asked quietly. "How do you fight an enemy that can turn invisible and steal children from under our noses?" General Patricia Morrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, cleared her throat. "Madam President, we have to assume this is a test. Someone wanted to see how we would react to this kind of provocation. They took our children to see if we would break." "Then they don't understand humans very well," Chen replied, her voice hardening. "They think we'll panic, maybe beg for our children back. They think we'll show them how weak and primitive we are." She turned to face the room full of advisors, military officers, and intelligence officials. Her expression had transformed from grief to something much more dangerous. They're about to learn why that was a mistake. Meanwhile, in space, the Silent Talon continued its journey toward Empire space. In the cargo hold, the human children began to wake up. They found themselves in strange metallic chambers that hummed with alien energy. Some cried for their parents. Others tried to break free from their containments. A few, like Marcus, began studying their surroundings and planning escape attempts. The children had no way of knowing that their capture would trigger the most devastating war the galaxy had ever seen. They couldn't understand that their absence would awaken something primal and terrifying in their species. They were just scared kids who wanted to go home. But back on Earth, their disappearance had lit a fire that would burn across the stars. In secure bunkers beneath military installations around the world, scientists and engineers began working around the clock on projects that had been theoretical just days before. The space agencies that had been focused on exploration suddenly shifted their efforts toward weaponization. Nations that had been enemies for generations began sharing technology and resources with an urgency that surprised even themselves. Dr. James Harrison, head of the secret Aurora project, stood before a massive holographic display showing humanity's current space-based assets. "We have 68 orbital platforms, 23 deep space monitoring stations, and 12 prototype warships that aren't ready for combat," he reported to the Emergency Council, "against an enemy that can become invisible and travel faster than light." "Then we make more," replied Admiral Lisa Rodriguez, commander of the fledgling Space Defense Force. "We mobilize every resource, every factory, every brilliant mind on this planet. We turn Earth into a fortress, and we prepare to bring hell to whoever took our children." The transformation began immediately. Factory floors that had been producing civilian goods switched to military hardware. Research facilities that had been exploring peaceful applications of exotic physics suddenly found their budgets increased by factors of 10. Universities began crash courses in theoretical xenobiology and alien psychology. Most importantly, humanity began to unite in a way it had never done before. The capture of those 47 children had accomplished something that decades of diplomacy and cooperation had failed to achieve. It had given humanity a common enemy and a shared purpose that transcended all previous divisions. In the depths of space, Vextar reviewed the intelligence reports on human civilization one more time. According to Empire databases, humans were fragmented, weak, and technologically primitive. They had no unified government, no significant military space presence, and no experience with interstellar warfare. The capture of their young would demonstrate the Sekhem. The Awakening. 3 months after the disappearance of the Riverside children, Earth had transformed into something unrecognizable. The blue marble that had once been divided by nations and borders was now a unified war machine focused on a single purpose: finding and retrieving their stolen young. Dr. Elena Vasquez stood in the command center of humanity's first true warship, the Retribution. The vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, bristling with weapons that had been theoretical just months earlier. Railguns capable of firing projectiles at significant fractions of light speed lined its hull. Fusion missiles with yields measured in teratons filled its weapon bays. Most importantly, it carried humanity's first successful attempt at faster-than-light communication and tracking systems. "Status report," Elena commanded. As the newly appointed Director of Human Defense Initiative, she had been given authority that crossed all national boundaries. The 47 missing children had made such considerations irrelevant. "Ma'am, we've successfully tracked the energy signature from the abduction site," reported Lieutenant Commander Park, formerly of the South Korean Navy, now part of humanity's integrated space force. "Our deep space monitoring network detected a hyperspace disturbance matching the theoretical parameters. The trail leads toward the Andromeda sector." Elena nodded grimly. Months of round-the-clock work by humanity's greatest scientific minds had finally borne fruit. By analyzing the residual energy signatures left behind during the children's abduction, they had developed new forms of physics that allowed them to track faster-than-light travel. It was a breakthrough that should have taken decades of research, accomplished in a matter of months through desperate necessity. "How many ships do we have combat-ready?" she asked. 43 warships of the Retribution class, 12 deep strike vessels, and over 200 support craft," replied Admiral Chen, formerly of the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy. "Every major shipyard on Earth and in the inner system is operating at maximum capacity. We're launching new vessels every week." The transformation had been extraordinary. Nations that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war against each other suddenly found themselves working in unprecedented cooperation. American factories produced hull plating for European ships. Russian rocket scientists worked alongside Japanese engineers. Chinese rare earth elements powered British weapon systems. The kidnapping of their children had accomplished what generations of diplomats had failed to achieve. But the changes went deeper than mere cooperation. Humanity had discovered something about itself in those desperate months. When their young were threatened, they didn't just unite, they evolved. Dr. Marcus Webb, formerly a theoretical physicist at MIT, now head of the Exotic Weapons Division, entered the command center carrying a data pad with an expression of barely contained excitement. "Elena, we've done it. We've cracked their stealth technology." He pulled up a holographic display showing complex energy patterns. "The alien ship that took our children used some form of electromagnetic field manipulation to bend light around their hull. We've developed countermeasures. More importantly, we've improved on their design." Elena studied the data, her engineer's mind quickly grasping the implications. "Our ships can do the same thing? Better? We can not only hide from their sensors, we can make ourselves appear to be something else entirely. An asteroid, a comet, even empty space. And Elena—" Marcus paused, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We've learned how to track ships using this technology. We know where they've been, where they're going, and how many of them there are." This was the moment Elena had been waiting for. "Show me." The holographic display shifted, revealing a 3-dimensional map of nearby star systems. Dozens of red dots appeared, each one representing an alien vessel moving through space. Most were moving away from Earth, but several were heading toward human space. "They're coming back," Admiral Chen observed. "Let them come," Elena replied coldly. "This time, we'll be ready." What humanity's leaders didn't know was that their children, 47 light-years away, had become something more than prisoners. On the slave processing station orbiting Zelnara Prime, the human children had been awakening to abilities that their captors didn't understand. Marcus Chen, the 14-year-old who had tried to protect the younger children during the abduction, sat in his containment cell planning his 15th escape attempt. The previous 14 had failed, but each one had taught him something new about their captors' technology and psychology. More importantly, something was happening to him that he couldn't explain. He could sense the other children, even through the energy barriers that separated their cells. When little Emma cried for her mother, Marcus felt her distress as if it were his own. When 8-year-old Tommy tried to break through his cell wall, Marcus could feel the boy's determination and frustration. Somehow, the trauma of their capture and imprisonment was awakening something in their minds. The Zephyrian guards had noticed it too. Marcus had overheard them talking in their clicking, whistling language about unusual neural patterns and unexpected adaptation rates. They were running tests on the children, trying to understand what they were seeing, but their science couldn't explain what was happening. What was happening was evolution in real time. The stress of captivity, the exposure to alien technology and environments, and something deeper in human genetics was triggering changes in the children's brains. They were developing abilities that would have been called telepathic or psychic, but were actually advanced forms of quantum consciousness that allowed them to manipulate matter and energy at the subatomic level. Emma, the 5-year-old who had been playing hopscotch when the aliens took her, discovered she could make her cell door unlock just by thinking about it. When the guards realized what had happened, they installed stronger locks. Emma unlocked those too. When they installed energy barriers, Emma learned to walk through them as if they weren't there. Tommy found he could make objects move without touching them. At first, it was just making his food tray slide across the floor. Then he began lifting larger objects, bending metal bars and rearranging the mechanical components of his cell's life support systems. But it was Marcus who made the breakthrough that would change everything. While the other children were developing individual abilities, Marcus was learning to connect their minds into a unified network. He could feel all 47 children as if they were parts of a single organism, and he was beginning to understand that together, they were far more powerful than the sum of their parts. On the night that would later be remembered as the Liberation, Marcus reached out through the quantum field that connected all human minds and touched something vast and angry moving through space toward their location. For a moment, he made contact with his mother, Elena Vasquez, who was standing in the command center of humanity's flagship, and through her, with the collective will of an entire species that had spent months preparing for war. The message was simple and clear. "We're coming for you." Back on Earth, Elena suddenly staggered as an impossible sensation flooded her mind. For just an instant, she could see through Marcus's eyes, feel his presence, and understand that her son was alive and fighting to survive. More importantly, she could sense that he and the other children had become something remarkable. "Elena, what's wrong?" Admiral Chen asked, reaching out to steady her. "They're alive," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "All of them, and they're fighting back." She turned to the communications console. "Signal all ships. We launch immediately. Full fleet maximum burn. It's time to bring our children home." The Retribution and 42 sister ships engaged their hyperdrives simultaneously, vanishing from the Sol system in streaks of twisted space-time. Behind them, they left a world that had been forever changed by the kidnapping of 47 children. Ahead of them lay a confrontation that would announce humanity's arrival on the galactic stage. But they weren't going to war as the primitive, fragmented species that the Zephyrians had catalogued. They were going as something new, something that the galaxy had never seen before. They were going as the Reckoning. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zel-Nara system like avenging angels descending from heaven. 43 massive warships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls bristling with weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. At the center of the formation, the flagship Retribution slowly rotated to bring its main batteries to bear on the slave processing station orbiting the system's primary world. Elena Vasquez stood on the command bridge, her hands gripping the tactical display as she studied the target that held her son and 46 other human children. The station was enormous, easily 10 times larger than anything humanity had ever built, but Elena felt no intimidation. She felt only cold, focused rage that had been building for months. "Status report," she commanded. "All ships report ready for combat operations," replied Admiral Chen. "Stealth systems active. Enemy appears unaware of our presence." Through the quantum field that connected all human minds, Elena could sense her son Marcus reaching out to her from somewhere inside that station. Over the months of their captivity, the children had developed abilities that defied conventional understanding of physics and biology. But more than that, they had learned to work together as a single, unified consciousness that could manipulate matter and energy at levels that shocked even their human rescuers. "Marcus, can you hear me?" Elena whispered, focusing her thoughts through the strange connection they had discovered. "Mom," came the response, clear as if he were standing beside her. "We're ready. All 47 of us. We know what to do." On the slave station, Marcus Chen gathered the other children in the central detention area through methods that their captors still couldn't understand. The Zephyrian guards watched in confusion as human children walked through energy barriers, unlocked security doors with thoughts, and somehow appeared in locations where sensors insisted they couldn't be. "Everyone together," Marcus said quietly, "just like we practiced." The children joined hands in a circle, their minds linking through the quantum field that bound their consciousness. What the Empire's scientists had failed to understand was that humans were naturally quantum-entangled organisms. Stress and trauma had simply awakened abilities that had always been present in their species. The children had learned to access the same fundamental forces that powered hyperdrives and matter transporters. Commander Vextar stood in the station's command center, reviewing reports that made less sense each day. The human specimens were displaying impossible abilities. They could walk through solid matter, manipulate electronic systems without touching them, and somehow communicate across unlimited distances. Even worse, they seemed to be growing stronger. "Sir," reported his sensor operator, "we're detecting massive hyperspace disturbances at the edge of the system. Multiple contacts. Configuration unknown." Vextar's 4 eyes focused on the tactical display. 43 ships had appeared from nowhere, their energy signatures unlike anything in Imperial databases. They were obviously artificial constructs, but their technology appeared to be an impossible fusion of Imperial science and something else entirely. "Identify those vessels," he ordered. "Sir, they're broadcasting an identification signal. Ship's registry indicates human origin." Vextar's mandibles clicked in disbelief. According to every intelligence report, humans were a primitive species with barely functional space travel capabilities. They had no military presence beyond their own star system. The idea that they could field a fleet of advanced warships was impossible. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications operator. "On screen," Vextar commanded. The main display filled with the image of a human female in military uniform. Her expression was cold and absolutely implacable. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight of authority that made hardened Imperial veterans step backward. "I am Director Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Initiative. You are holding 47 human children aboard your facility. You will release them immediately and unconditionally, or we will take them by force." Vextar recovered from his initial shock and clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his species. You are in no position to make demands, Primitive. This is Imperial space, under the protection of the Galactic Empire. Your pathetic little ships will be destroyed if you do not withdraw immediately. Elena's expression didn't change. Commander, you misunderstand the situation. We are not making demands. We are explaining what is about to happen. She gestured to something off-screen. You have 30 seconds to begin releasing our children. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why threatening human families was the worst mistake your empire ever made. The transmission ended, leaving Vextar staring at a blank screen. He turned to his tactical officer. How many ships do they have? 43 confirmed, sir. Unknown class, but energy signatures suggest significant weapon systems. And we have? The station's defensive systems plus the Imperial cruiser Dominator and 2 destroyer escorts in nearby space. Vextar considered his options. The humans had surprised him by showing up at all, but he still commanded superior firepower. Imperial ships had ruled the galaxy for millennia. These primitive vessels, regardless of their number, could not seriously challenge Imperial military superiority. Signal the Dominator. Destroy the human fleet. The Imperial cruiser moved to engage, its massive plasma cannons charging for a devastating first strike. But as it opened fire, something impossible happened. The human ships simply weren't there anymore. They had vanished from sensors and reappeared in different positions, as if they could teleport through space. How are they doing that? Vexatar demanded. His science officer was frantically working his instruments. Sir, I'm reading massive quantum field fluctuations throughout the system. It's as if space itself is being manipulated at the subatomic level. What the Imperial officers didn't understand was that human ships weren't just using technology to achieve faster-than-light travel and stealth capabilities. They were using human crews whose minds had been enhanced through months of desperate research and development. The same quantum consciousness that allowed the captured children to manipulate matter was being amplified through shipboard systems that fused human neural activity with exotic physics. The human fleet didn't just have better technology than the Empire, they had transcended the boundary between organic consciousness and mechanical systems. Their ships were extensions of human will, guided by minds that could perceive and manipulate reality at the quantum level. The battle that followed lasted exactly 17 minutes. Imperial plasma bolts passed harmlessly through space where human ships had been microseconds before. Fusion missiles detonated against empty vacuum as their targets flickered in and out of normal space-time. Meanwhile, human weapons struck with impossible precision, penetrating Imperial shields and armor as if they weren't there. The Dominator lasted longer than the destroyer escorts, but only because its captain had the wisdom to surrender before his ship was completely destroyed. When the engagement ended, the slave processing station hung alone and defenseless in space, surrounded by 43 human warships that had appeared from a supposedly primitive civilization. Elena's image appeared again on the station's main screen. This time, she wasn't making demands or threats. She was simply stating facts. Commander Vexatar, your fleet has been neutralized. Your station's defensive systems have been disabled. You will now release our children, or we will come aboard and take them. Choose wisely. Inside the station, Marcus and the other children felt their parents' presence growing stronger as the human ships moved closer. The quantum field that connected their minds was resonating with the consciousness of 40,000 human crew members who had spent months training for this moment. It's time, Marcus told the others. Let's go home. The children joined hands once more and simply disappeared from their detention cells. They reappeared in the station's main hangar bay, where Zephyrian guards watched in terror as 47 human children materialized out of empty air. The guards raised their weapons, but found that the energy cells had mysteriously drained. Their communication devices were dead. Even the lights began to flicker and fade. "Thank you for taking care of us," Emma said politely to the nearest guard, her 5-year-old voice carrying undertones of power that made the alien soldier step backward. "But our parents are here now." The human fleet's transport shuttles had already docked with the station. Rescue teams moved through the corridors, but they found the children waiting for them in the hangar bay, calm and apparently unharmed. The reunion between parents and children was emotional beyond description, but it was also something more. The quantum field that connected human consciousness had been strengthened by separation and was now more powerful than ever before. Commander Vexitar was brought aboard the Retribution in chains. He stood before Elena Vasquez in the ship's detention center, his 4 eyes wide with fear and confusion. "How?" he asked simply. "Your species was primitive, divided, weak." Elena studied the alien who had kidnapped her son. "You made several errors in your assessment, Commander. First, you assumed that technological advancement was the only measure of a species' potential. Second, you believed that our divisions made us weak." She moved closer to the containment field that held him. "But your greatest mistake was threatening our children. You see, Commander, humans have a saying, 'Hurt my family, and you'll learn exactly what I'm capable of.' You just taught our entire species what we're capable of." "What will happen to me?" Vexitar asked. "You will be returned to your empire with a message," Elena replied. "Tell them that humanity is no longer a primitive species hiding in a single star system. Tell them that we have transcended the limitations they thought defined us. Tell them that the age of human expansion has begun." She paused at the door of the detention center. "And, Commander, tell them that if they ever threaten human families again, they will discover that we can do far worse things than ending their 6,000 years of peace. We can end them entirely." The human fleet departed the Zelnara system 3 hours later, leaving behind the wreckage of Imperial ships and a slave processing station that would never again hold captured children. But more importantly, they left behind the announcement that a new power had emerged in the galaxy. Humanity had awakened to its true potential, and the universe would never be the same. Aboard the Retribution, Elena stood with her son Marcus in the observation deck, watching the stars stream past as they headed home to Earth. Around them, other families were reunited with their children, but the joy was tempered by the knowledge that everything had changed. "Mom," Marcus said quietly, "we're different now, all of us. We can do things that shouldn't be possible." Elena nodded. "I know, son. The question is what we do with these abilities." "The Empire won't stop," Marcus replied with wisdom beyond his 14 years. "They'll come for us eventually, and they'll come in greater numbers." "Then we'll be ready," Elena said firmly. "All of humanity will be ready. We've learned that when our families are threatened, we can become anything we need to become." The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the rescued children back to a world that had been forever changed by their absence. Behind them, they left a galaxy that was about to discover that humanity's true power had never been their technology or their unity. It had been their love for their children and their willingness to transcend every limitation to protect them. The war for galactic supremacy had begun, and humanity had just announced their intention to win it. A unified human civilization driven by the oldest and most powerful force in the universe, the love of parents for their children. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for 6,000 years through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never encountered a species that could match their advancement so quickly, or more importantly, a species that refused to accept defeat when their young were threatened. In the depths of space between star systems, the human fleet raced toward its destination at speeds that bent the laws of physics. In the command center of the Retribution, Elena stared at the star charts showing their route to the Andromeda sector. Her son was out there somewhere, along with 46 other children whose families had trusted her to bring them home. She would not fail them. Humanity would not fail them. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and it would be announced by the sound of Imperial ships burning in the darkness between the stars. Your helplessness, and make them compliant when the Empire eventually arrived to claim their world. It was a calculation that would prove to be the Empire's greatest mistake. The Silent Talon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Empire territory, preparing to dock with the slave processing station orbiting Zelnara Prime. Commander Vextar felt satisfied with his successful mission. In his mind, he had struck a decisive blow against a primitive species that would soon learn its place in the galactic order. He had no idea that he had just started a war that would end the Empire's 6,000-year reign of peace and reshape the galaxy forever. The sleeping children in his cargo hold were more than just prisoners. They were the spark that would ignite humanity's transformation from a planetary species into something the galaxy had never seen before. The age of human supremacy was about to begin, and it would be written in fire across the stars.